Rise of Shadows has been revealed, and I'm going to break down all the details you need to know about the upcoming Hearthstone expansion.
Hey buddy, watch this.
I can't believe it. After all the teasing, Rise of Shadows has finally been revealed. I've known for weeks and weeks, and I finally get to share it with you guys. So yeah, Rafam and his League of Evil certainly seem to have some dastardly plans for Dalaran, and I think that means that the Hearthstone team has some exciting plans for this expansion. So of course, I want to talk about all of it. We're going to take a look at the cards real quick. We're going to talk about the details and basics of the expansion, when it's coming out, how you can pre-order it, and we're going to just cover all of the different new mechanics and keywords in detail, because I've seen them in action and I can share exactly how they work. So all that said, let's jump right into it with a quick glance here at the cards that have been revealed so far. We have 8 new cards, including 3 just outstandingly cool legendaries, a handful of new mechanics and keywords like schemes, callback cards, Twinspell, and Lackies. We even get a much desired tech card with Spell Ward Jeweler over there. And for the record, I'm not going to talk about each of these cards in a lot of detail in this video. I have a card review posted on my channel already if you want to hear my detailed thoughts and 5-star ratings for these cards. But I'm just so excited to see really recognizable Warcraft lore characters like Callbacks, funny meme World of Warcraft references like Chef Nomi, kind of a real lore character in a way too. And then of course, like awesome executions on Archvillain Rafam. That card, as you're reading it right now, is insane. So I think really all of these are promising in different ways and are going to lead to some exciting moments in Rise of Shadows. Now, I'm not saying all these cards are good necessarily, just that they do things and they represent some great trends for the expansion. So hopefully the following cards we see follow suit, because this is a really cool set of initial reveals. Particularly those legendary cards are so cool. So all that said, why don't we go ahead and talk about how you can pre-order these cards and when Rise of Shadows will be released. First things first, Rise of Shadows is going to be hitting on April 9th. The solo adventure is going to come a little later, but the expansion itself will hit April 9th, and there will be some pre-release activities starting, I believe, April 5th. There are going to be 2 ways you could pre-purchase for Rise of Shadows, much like we've seen in the past. You can get a 50-pack bundle for $50, which also comes with an exclusive card back and a legendary card, just one of the random legendary cards from the set. Alternatively, you can go for the 80-pack mega bundle for $80. This one comes with a hero portrait of Madame Lazul. That's not a hero card, that's a hero portrait. If you're like, who the heck's Madame Lazul? That is the fortune teller that's been revealing all these teasers for Rise of Shadows over the last week or two. You also get the same card back, and you get a golden legendary card, a random golden instead of a regular. And of course, you can buy both of these bundles as well if you're looking for everything, which for somebody like me who's going to buy a lot of packs anyway, these often offer the best sort of value return for your dollar for packs, because usually you don't get a pack for $1. Usually it's more than $1. So in both cases, I think these are awesome opportunities to invest in card packs if that's something that you're likely to do. So now that we've covered some of these most obvious basics, I want to talk about the keywords upcoming in this expansion. There are a few new mechanics and keywords, and I thought since I have some inside experience playing these already and seeing them in action, I could really walk you through what each of them actually means. So up first, we have Lackies. And Lackies are basically the new spare parts. If you remember from Goblins versus Gnomes, you'd get 1-mana spells added to your hand. Lackies are kind of like that, but they're minions instead. So we can see this collectible card here on the left, the Evil Miscreant for Rogue. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but essentially it adds Lackies to your hand. And there are going to be other cards that also add Lackies to your hand. And there are 5 different Lackies, which you'll see pictured here behind me. They're all honestly pretty solid, I think, for 1-mana 1/1s. They have really strong battle cry effects. So the Ethereal Lackey will allow you to discover a spell. And discovering a spell is good because you get to pick what it is. Like, that's a good effect for a 1-mana card. The Goblin Lackey gives a friendly minion +1 attack and rush. If it's just +1 attack, that wouldn't be exciting, but giving a minion rush can create some neat opportunities to take instant trades. The Witchy Lackey is essentially an evolve. It transforms a friendly minion into one that costs 1 more. So evolves are going to be available in other classes beyond Shaman, which is pretty cool, but that's because it comes from the Witch of Hagatha, which is a Shaman-based card, so that's fun. The Kobold Lackey just deals 2 damage, and that's actually pretty sick for a 1-mana Battlecry. Like, we've seen cards like that played before. It's Elven Archer ×2, right? And then the Faceless Lackey summons a random 2-cost minion. So for 1 mana, you're getting kind of 3 mana almost worth of bodies on board, which can just be a good token sort of play. Now, of course, one downside for something like the Evil Miscreant here is you don't know which lackeys you're going to get, but nonetheless, I think they all have some positively impactful things that they're doing, and they're certainly better than your average 1-mana card. They're way more valuable than a standard 1-drop. I think Goblin Lackey's probably the closest to a 1-drop, but in most cases, they're much better than what you'd expect. So if you're able to build a deck that utilizes these successfully in some way with like Battlecry synergies or combo synergies, which certainly makes a lot of sense in Rogue, these Lackeys create some pretty neat opportunities and can just keep things moving in your hand. So I think these are going to present a lot of interesting gameplay opportunities to actually be successful and powerful and influential. Spare parts kind of felt more like a leftover side effect sort of thing. They never seemed to be that influential to me, but I think these have more of a chance to succeed in the meta. So keep an eye out for Lackey generating cards. So up next now, let's talk about schemes. Another new mechanic. We have an example here with Hagatha's Scheme for Shaman, a 5-mana spell. At its base, it deals 1 damage to all minions, but it has this effect, and all schemes will have the same effect, where it upgrades each turn. So it will go up to deal 2 damage to all minions. The cost will remain the same, and then 3 damage to all minions, and then 4 damage to all minions, and theoretically will scale till the end of the game, where it does like 44 damage to all minions when you finally hit the turn limit, which of course is ridiculous. Now, I do want to clarify one thing, and I've seen this in action, so I know this is true. When it says upgrades each turn, that does not mean each turn individually between both players. Like Gruul, for instance, where Gruul will gain +1/+1 on your turn, and then on your opponent's turn, and then on your turn. This only works when it comes back to you and it's your turn to play the card. So it's really only upgrading on your turns. So each time you have an opportunity to play it, it'll be 1 higher. It won't gain 2 damage, for instance, in between each opportunity to play it. So the first turn you see it, it deals 1. The second turn you see it, it deals 2. The third turn you see it, it deals 3, etc. So keep that in mind. I think the wording here is a little bit confusing and non-specific, so I know that might cause some confusion like it did me when I initially saw this card. But nonetheless, if you hold this in your hand for 3 or 4 turns, suddenly it's going to turn into a pretty valuable removal tool. I think it starts to feel good around that 4 damage mark is where this feels pretty balanced. And then as it scales beyond that, it just gets better and better. So if you're able to hold a card like this in hand, it's going to be crazy good. And it's probably going to be pretty bad to start, but eventually that makes a lot of sense. So maybe control decks like tools like this, so they don't mind sitting on a card or 2 until they can really build up all that extra value and power out of it, and then they unleash it on their opponents. And I think multiple classes will have schemes. Can't talk about what they are, but keep your eye out for more schemes in the future. So now let's move on to the next mechanic here, keyword. This is Twinspell, and this one was teased pretty heavily in the Reddit AMA with the Hearthstone developers. And the way Twinspell works is, whenever you play a spell with Twinspell from your hand, you basically just get an extra copy that stays in your hand. It's a bit like Echo, but it's a permanent Echo. Whereas Echo will go away at the end of the turn if you don't use it, the Twinspell just stays in your hand forever. And somewhat importantly, it stays in the same position in your hand as well. It doesn't add itself to the right side of your hand, which can have some importance and impact, as we've seen cards that change their power level based on where they're at in your hand. Think like Stargazer Luna, for instance. It wouldn't move to the end of your hand for Stargazer Luna. It would stay where it was. So you basically, you kind of throw it out and it looks like it didn't go anywhere. It still stays there. Now, the second copy does not have Twinspell. It doesn't chain forever. You just get an extra copy, essentially. So it's almost like if you have a spell you really want to run, for instance here with the Forest's Aid, if you really, really need Treants in your deck, but you don't want to run that many different cards to summon Treants, you can just run 1 copy of Forest's Aid and you'll still get 2 ways to utilize it, right? So you'll get 10 Treants for only 1 card in your deck slot instead of only getting 5 Treants. So maybe you can commit the rest to ramp or some kind of survivability options, whatever it might be. So you still get to explore that synergy side of things without actually compromising the rest of your deck or committing your deck too hard. So it's almost like getting to run extra cards in your deck in a way, or almost like drawing 2 cards for the price of 1 each time you draw this, because you get twice as much resource for every single card that you draw. So I'm sure that some decks will like to be able to utilize that, because each card draw becomes more valuable and more impactful, and each synergy tool becomes more valuable and more impactful. So I think it's a cool mechanic to keep an eye on. It seems simple. It seems a bit like a rehash of Echo in some ways, but it does operate distinctly and I think offers some unique opportunities that Echo never did. So keep an eye on this one. And then finally, there's one last kind of keyword or mechanic here, and they're called callbacks. And callbacks are going to be cards that reference mechanics or keywords in old expansions, particularly expansions that a certain character might be from. So for instance, here with forbidden words for priest, you can see this is Madame Lazul, the fortune teller with her snake buddy. And this one harkens back to Whispers of the Old Gods with the forbidden mechanic. And if you don't remember, with forbidden, you would spend all your mana and then something would happen. And of course, this is not going to be a complete rehash of those old ones. You'll see this is quite a bit different than Priest's forbidden mechanic back in the day. But it's just going to kind of base itself on that style, just kind of in a new direction, but still with the same sort of name and reference to that old style. So for instance, if there's a Dr. Boom callback card, it will throw back to Boomsday Project. Maybe it would be like a mechanic mech, for instance. If there is a Rafam card, it's going to go back to League of Explorers. So maybe it's a like Discover callback or some other callback. So Forbidden Words is a great example. This one, of course, you can see is all about destroying minions instead of summoning a minion, which we saw with the old Priest Forbidden card. But nonetheless, I think this is a cool way to kind of pay homage to some of those old sets and the kind of 5-year anniversary idea of Rise of Shadows, while still exploring some new design space along the way. So that wraps it up for this video. We talked about the details and basics, saw the new cards, covered all the keywords in quite a bit of depth there, and I'm really excited. I don't necessarily think the theme to me is perfect. I don't love like the villain team and kind of rehashing characters we've seen recently. I could go in a different direction with characters, but Dalaran as a setting is amazing. I think we see some really cool cards, and that's what's most important to me, is what is going to exist in the game space on the board when I'm playing. Things like Chef Nomi, Calicos, Archvillain Ravam look incredible. So I'm really excited, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think. What's your take on Rise of Shadows now that you know a little bit more about it? Share all those thoughts in the comments below. But until then, thank you so very much for watching, and until next time, game on.